and welcome back to Adaptation, where we talk about film adaptations and the original material they're based on. I'm Kendall Bryant, and being that we are about to see the big guy in red all over our television screens, I thought this might be a good time to talk about Santa Claus. The way that we think about Santa Claus today has been adapted a ton since the real guy, St. Nicholas, was alive in the end of the 3rd and beginning of the 4th century. He was Bishop of Myra, a deeply religious man who was known for being generous and helping those in need. Eventually, he would be named the patron saint of voyagers, marriage, children, and about a million other things. Seriously, this guy has a lot to take care of, but let's just focus on those 3. The bit about the voyagers comes from a tale where he was on a ship that was in a terrible storm, and when he stayed calm and just prayed, the waters and the winds calmed down as well. This later contributes to a Dutch legend where St. Nicholas first arrives by ship before he rides over the rooftops on his horse. He's called the Saint of Marriage because of a story where he helped a man with 3 daughters and no money by leaving 3 bags of gold in his home. Well, they mysteriously appeared, so that the man would have enough for a dowry for each of his daughters. This is also probably where Santa Claus gets his gift-giving nature. Finally, it's said that St. Nicholas saved 3 children, or maybe students, from an evil innkeeper that had kidnapped, murdered them, and put them in barrels to pickle them so that he could eat them. St. Nicholas found them and prayed over them, and they were revived. And that is why for centuries the 6th of December was celebrated as St. Nicholas Day. But the legend of St. Nick has taken some things from non-Catholic origins as well. For example, when the Germanic peoples were being Christianized, some of their ideas of Odin and the Yule celebration, which was also in December, got blended in with St. Nicholas Day. To start with, Odin has a long white beard. He rides around in the sky on a horse, especially during this time of year because he's leading the wild hunt, and he passes judgment on whether people are worthy of entering Valhalla. St. Nicholas? Long white beard. At the time he was depicted as riding around on a horse, and instead of passing judgment on warriors, he's passing judgment on children and whether they're worthy of being rewarded. And while we're on the subject, in many cultures St. Nick had a sidekick that would dole out punishments to those that were unworthy, while St. Nick got to reward those that were. Thus the legend of Krampus was born, among many others. So for a good long while, the legend of this Roman Catholic saint is spreading around Europe. Everybody's celebrating him at the beginning of December. And then the 16th century rolls around. The Reformation hits, and it's no longer cool to be Catholic. England flat out bans celebrating St. Nicholas Day, and some guy tries to do the same in the Netherlands, but the Dutch are way too attached to their Sinterklaas to stop celebrating Sinterklaas Day, so they keep on doing it for a good long while. Which is pretty lucky for our modern-day Santa, since that's where he gets his name from. Santa Claus, Sinterklaas, it's not much of a stretch. As well as the idea to drop gifts down the chimneys in order to get them into the houses. But they still somehow magically end up in people's shoes, which just must be a Santa thing. England, however, adopts the idea of Father Christmas, who probably existed for about a century before St. Nicholas was banned, and is kind of an amalgamation of ideas from people that had invaded England up to that point. The Saxons contributed their idea of an anthropomorphized winter, the Romans contributed their idea of Saturn and his feasting and revelry, and once again, Odin threw in his judgment and his fashion sense in the form of a hooded robe. But really, Father Christmas is just meant to be a personification of the Christmas spirit, and the celebration that comes with him is all about eating, drinking, and being merry. He's basically the ghost of Christmas present. It wasn't until the 1800s in America that the version of Santa Claus we know really got its start. Images started to depict him in more elf-like clothing instead of bishop's robes. An anonymous poem in 1821 added the idea of a sleigh driven by reindeer. And 2 years after that, A Visit from St. Nicholas was published, which is now known as The Night Before Christmas. And that pretty much solidified all of the Santa Claus canon that we have today. And somewhere along the way, Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, and Father Christmas just became interchangeable names for one legendary man that graces us with his presence once a year, eats our cookies, drinks our milk, and passes judgment on how good we've been. If you want to know any more about this, there were tons of details and legends that I wasn't able to include, but I've put the links in the bar below, which is conveniently where you can find all the links to our social media as well as our podcast on iTunes. Please do check it out, and until next time, this is a picture of Father Christmas riding a goat. because that is something that everyone needs in their life.